Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome if you are new. My name is Ebony, I'm a naturopathic nutritionist, and today's question is, why can't I sleep? I don't think there is anything more frustrating than not being able to sleep. So I really hope, if you are in that boat right now, I really hope this video helps you and at least helps you plant a few seeds to start looking into a few things and guide you on your way to really find out what that root cause is. So first things first, let's just talk about stimulants of any kind. I'm actually going to start off with the coffee consumption side because this is something that some people know, but then I meet people who have never heard this before. Make sure you are not having coffee, I would say past 12 o'clock, okay, so midday. Caffeine has a half-life of 8 to 12 hours, okay? And when it comes to caffeine consumption, there is also a genetic element to this. Like, some people genetically are awful at metabolizing coffee, okay? But just generally in people are gonna metabolize it quicker than others. And when it comes to the half-life, for example, if someone has a cup of coffee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, well, if you count 8 to 12 hours later, that's going to be like middle of the night, right? And that can be a contributing reason as to why someone is really struggling with their sleep, particularly if they're feeling wired still at night. And actually, talking about caffeine consumption actually will probably relate to many people watching this, because I do see this scenario a lot where people obviously aren't sleeping properly, so they feel tired the next day, rightly so, and then to get themselves through the day, they're like, I need a cup of coffee, I need something just to keep me up. So people get really caught in that cycle. So definitely that's the first thing, cut that cycle and make sure you do not consume any caffeine past midday. Now, sticking on the stimulant topic, some other basic things just to make sure that you are avoiding is obviously stimulants before bed. So that would include things like high sugar consumption, definitely things like alcohol. Another thing also to think about is also the mental stimulation. It doesn't always have to be ingested things. So that could also be the type of TV you watch. Obviously, in an ideal world, we'd be saying, no tech the hour before bed. But also, I just want to make that, emphasis on, if you are watching something, what are you watching? Because that's something as well we sometimes don't think about as well, on that subconscious level. Sometimes what we consume can be really stimulating for our nervous system. Now, speaking of nervous system, I want to speak about cortisol, because this is another really big hormone that can really impact sleep and can cause insomnia. So we've got obviously our circadian rhythm. I keep saying obviously, that may not be obvious. We have got our circadian rhythm, and our circadian rhythm is basically the body clock, okay, our body clock. So when we wake up in the morning, so these are tips definitely for you to imply. When you wake up in the morning, make sure as soon as possible you go and get that daylight exposure, okay, because that natural daylight is what's going to signal into your body it's daytime, it's time to start, producing our hormones and start getting, the system going, essentially, okay? So make sure that you're getting that early daylight exposure. At the opposite end of the day before bed, you actually want to try and dim all your lights down. So if possible, actually change some of your lights in your house to red light bulbs. That can be really helpful, particularly if you've got little lamps, next to your bed, that kind of stuff. Try and make it all nice warm lighting, because that's also, again, sending signals to the body, it's time for sleep, it's time to wind down. Another thing that goes into that is also trying to set somewhat of a schedule. So again, I know we're talking about sleepless nights, but still try and create that schedule where it's you go to bed at the same time and you try and get up at the same time. Because if you fall into that trap where it's oh, I'm not sleeping, so then you just get out of bed at 1 a.m. and then go and sit and do something and try and calm yourself back down, it's not helping with the signaling. So try and be strict with that sleep-wake cycle. When it comes to cortisol, another thing that we also want to be thinking about here, particularly during the day, keep your blood sugar steady, okay? Because when we sleep poorly, it's actually going to worsen our insulin sensitivity. So the next day, you may notice you crave sugar more, and you might find that you are really on a roller coaster as well, in the sense of you might find food helps energy a little bit and then you crash down. Insulin and cortisol are very sensitive with each other, okay? They'll aggravate each other. So if one's going like this, the other one's gonna kind of go with it, right? Make sure you are stabilizing yourself in the morning. Otherwise, you're gonna get on a roller coaster and then that's gonna worsen cortisol. And if cortisol is contributing to your sleeplessness, Can you see where we're going here? It's a bit of like a, you know, a cycle and a spiral effect. So when you wake up in the morning and you have your breakfast, start your day on that high protein rich breakfast. Try and make sure you're getting at least 30 grams. I'll try and aim for 40 grams if you can of protein. But that's gonna really help stabilize those hormones in the morning and start trying to help regulate you out for the day, okay? With cortisol obviously being our stress hormone, we also do want to pay attention to if stress is an element, you know, in your day-to-day life. You know, what kind of job do you work? What is your, you know, mental load at the moment? Are there things going on in your life? Like when you lie down in bed at night, have you got things on your mind? These are all things to also be thinking about and starting to address. But some things just to throw in here, I would just say, is that make sure you are keeping good stress management. So that could be things like in your day, making sure you're having breaks, you're getting outside, getting some fresh air, going for some walks in nature, incredibly good for our, you know, our nervous system, but also good for that circadian rhythm, again, getting that daylight. Things like journaling can be really helpful, particularly if you're someone who's got quite a busy brain and you're like, I just can't switch my brain off. Journaling can be really good just to get thoughts out instead of holding them all in. Another one just to throw in, by the way, if you have got a busy brain, something that might help you, there's an amino acid I really love called L-theanine. I'll write it on the screen. But yeah, L-theanine can be really great for people who get busy brain, busy thoughts. It's not a sedative, so it's not going to make you like sleepy and tired, but it will help just calm that part of the brain and kind of calm anxiety. So I do like using that amino acid if someone has got really busy, you know, brain and thoughts. For some people, maybe you need more slow-paced activities in your day-to-day. Maybe the realization is actually I am very go, go, go. And what happens when people are very go, go, go is they actually sometimes flip over into being very adrenaline driven, and that can also, you know, add into like that whole picture imbalances internally and cause us to have sleep issues. Now I want to switch gears and actually talk about minerals, because there's actually something that I see a lot on mineral tests that I think is worth mentioning. Now a test that I run in my practice is something called a HTMA, so a hair tissue mineral analysis, and a mineral I want to mention is actually copper. So what's really interesting is that I see a lot of clients who have sleep issues, and when I run HTMA tests, not every single one of them, but there's been a good few of them where there's a very similar pattern and they all have high copper. Copper in the body likes to retain, particularly in the liver first, but then it can go to the brain. So basically in terms of symptoms, if someone has got copper toxicity in the body, it can cause definitely sleep issues like insomnia, absolutely. Can also cause nightmares and sleep disturbances like that, and like psychological episodes. It can cause anxiety, like irritability, even anger in some people. It can be very neurologically driven because it can go to the brain. So that would also be another thing. Like if someone's dealing with very chronic, you know, sleeplessness and insomnia, I would also love to run their minerals on them and just see what their minerals are saying, because that can also give us a lot of insight into potentially what could be, you know, driving this picture. And another thing just to mention, because I really love, like in my videos, just really keep injecting this naturopathic way of thinking. But basically, like even me just saying all of that about copper, it's not just like, oh, copper comes back on a mineral test and we're like, oh, we've got high copper. Okay, cool, just get rid of that. We then also need to be thinking like, why is the copper so high? Like, for example, that could stem back to the liver could be stagnant and the body is struggling to metabolize and clear the copper out properly. Actually, a really nice segue into the next point as well that I also want to touch on, which can cause sleeplessness, is imbalances between hormones, so particularly between estrogen and progesterone. And just like tying this to the topic of copper, copper is actually very estrogenic. So actually when people have high copper, it can also raise estrogen up in the body as well. So that can also be a common scenario. So it's not just about copper, it could be also causing issues between that estrogen progesterone balance, and that's also contributing to the sleeplessness. So yeah, when it comes to like getting to the root cause of a symptom, it's never just one thing. It's always a collection of things, but they all come together into that one thing. So that's how we always have to be thinking here, like how does one thing affect the next, etc. But by, you know, that's why, you know, from a naturopathic perspective, we're digging for the root, because once you get that root and then you're like, right, now we know we've got support and like rebuild it from the bottom up, whew, like that's where you're like, health is winning. Anyway, right, going back then to the hormones. So yes, estrogen and progesterone imbalances, also a very common contributor, particularly to sleep issues, particularly when they're fluctuating. So another thing that I'd also would say to you is pay attention, like, is the insomnia and the sleeplessness every single night? Or is it worse at certain times of your cycle if you are a female, okay? So that's the other thing I would definitely touch on. Because when it comes to progesterone and estrogen, just to say, you'll never just have one out of balance and the other one's like fine. If one goes out of balance, then they're both out of balance. They need to be in balance with each other, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So for example, progesterone actually could be at a good level, but estrogen could be wildly too high. So that's making it out of balance, right? Similarly, the other way around, you could have good estrogen, but really low progesterone. That is out of balance, right? From a clinical perspective, like, I would want to know about your menstrual cycle. You know, how long is your menstrual cycle? What are your symptoms? Do you get any PMS? And that can tell us a lot, you know, what maybe hormonally could be going on there. Are you ovulating? Massive question, because if you're not ovulating, you're not producing progesterone. So there's so much to dive into there with hormones. And remember, again, hormones are not root cause. Hormones are messengers. So they go to those, you know, we'll go to the deeper elements, which could be, is gut health doing good? Are you having bowel movements? You know, are you excreting your estrogen properly? Is your liver breaking down estrogen properly? Is there stagnation there? And that needs work. See, this is how we start digging deep, and that's where we start to get to the bottom of it. I could literally sit here and just talk for hours. Yeah, I hope this has been helpful. Hopefully there's been a few things in there that you're like, oh my God, that's something that I've never thought about, or maybe, you know, just something that sparked a little something in your mind. But I will just say, just to end off, you know, as really with any of my videos, any topics I talk about, with trying to like explain, you know, the body and these, you know, how things connect together, and, you know, trying to give that naturopathic approach. Of course, I will try, you know, my best through videos to give tips to you, but I think if you are suffering with, you know, a symptom that has been going on for a long time, I really do recommend that you work with a practitioner, because as you can see, there's so much, like, you know, it's why I could sit here and talk for ages, because there's so much like directions my brain could go in here and how things could work and connect together. So working with someone, they do all that hard work for you. You know, you don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to always fix it yourself. It's okay to get help. And that's something that I wish I did in my journey before I became a practitioner. I didn't ask for help. My God, I could have, you know, really cut down my journey by years if I had done that. So yeah, definitely do recommend. It doesn't have to necessarily be me, but just work with a practitioner who can help guide you. Oh my God, my voice is going. If you are though interested to work with me, I do work with clients one-to-one. All my information is always in the description box below. Okay, so give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If there's any questions you would like to see answered in future videos, then make sure you leave them down in the comments below. And if you aren't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.